You want to know which quarterbacks and tight ends should be in or out of your lineup for week 7? We're going to go game by game through every matchup to tell you who should be in your lineup. Remember, there are 6 teams with a bye this week. You're not going to see the Bengals, the Cowboys, Jets, Panthers, Texans, or Titans. There are still some players you don't have to worry about. These guys are absolute must start no matter what. At quarterback, Pat Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, and Tua Tagovailoa. At tight end, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson, and Sam Laporta. All right, let's get to those matchups, but first, a quick word.
Introducing our new app, Draft Lane. Connect with us anytime for your start sit, waiver questions, and more. We can instantly access your roster and tell you the exact right moves to make. Access your past leagues and climb the Draft Lane leaderboard and see how you stack up against your competitors. Both Yahoo and Sleeper are supported. Download Draft Lane today and use the promo code ENDGAME to receive $10 in your account. Available on the App Store and Google Play.
Thursday night, we're going to see the Jaguars take on the Saints. We would think it would be Trevor Lawrence, but it still remains to be seen. He did have a knee injury late in the game of week 6. So if he is full go, are you going to trust him?
Yeah, I think if he plays, you kind of have to. He's still a top 12 quarterback for me. I know he hasn't had tremendous upside, but he's better than pretty much any option on the waiver wire. If he plays, you start him.
Yeah, I don't love the matchup. I'm not really too worried about the injury. It doesn't sound serious. He's still kind of what he is, a low-end QB1. It doesn't look like he's going to break fantasy this year, but he's still startable. Now, if Trevor Lawrence doesn't play, because it is a short week, we might see CJ Beathard at quarterback. Is he a capable replacement?
No, hard pass here.
Yeah, I know they got weapons. I know he's experienced. Look, he could put up yards, but it's not a good matchup. In New Orleans, I'm going to pass. And then we have to consider Evan Engram with or without T-Law. Big difference?
I mean, you'd certainly prefer him with T-Law, but, we see backup quarterbacks target the tight end. So I think either way, I'm still rolling with Engram.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. I think Engram, even though, again, I really don't like this matchup for a tight end, but he's startable. Again, there's not a whole lot out there at tight end, so you could still roll with him either way. And on the other side, we got Derek Carr. Put up a 300-yard game last week. Can he do it against the Jags?
I think he could put up a 300-yard game. My worry is, can he throw touchdowns? I mean, man, can they throw some touchdowns in this offense? What is going on? But I think in this matchup at home, Derek Carr is at least a good streaming option.
Well, I'm going to go out and say it. I think Carr is going to be my top streaming option this week because the Jaguars have given up a fair amount of points to quarterbacks this year. Carr, I think, is being a little undervalued because, remember, that shoulder injury bothered him for a little while. Game script has worked against him. I think we see more of what we saw last week from Carr. I actually like him a lot this week. Lions going to take on the Ravens. Well, road Goff was a pretty good Goff still. Have we broken the curse of the road home splits? What do you think about Jared Goff in Baltimore?
Yeah, maybe we have. I mean, you can't love this matchup, of course, in Baltimore, but he's been solid this year. I think another guy, in 1 QB leagues is definitely startable.
Have to agree, not just because of last week, but look, you have to realize there's a good chance David Montgomery doesn't play. They might just have to pass the ball more. So even though I don't think it might be his biggest game, Goff is kind of settling in as a startable quarterback in single QB leagues every week. We're going to see Raiders at Bears, and that could be the battle of backup quarterbacks. Jimmy Garoppolo taken to the hospital with a back injury last week, so that means it looks like Brian Hoyer, the longtime veteran, is going to be the starter. Can you consider him because it's the Bears?
No, even against the Bears, I cannot consider Brian Hoyer. I mean, what year is this? I am not starting him.
Good point. He's got some weapons, but yeah, look, the Bears actually on defense the last 2 weeks haven't been that bad, so no. Deep super flex league, maybe. And then Chicago might have to roll with Tyson Bagent, the rookie that you probably hadn't heard of until last week. What do you do here?
You don't start him. Please. Even in Superflex, I'm not starting him.
I mean, the question is, even in a dynasty superflex league, are we picking him up? Yeah. In a redraft league, just forget and move on. And then Cole Kmet, I mean, is he just completely off the radar?
Yeah, for me, he is. I mean, you can't feel good about this offense. Look, maybe he'll score, but I mean, how many touchdowns are we even expecting him to throw for? So, yeah, can't start Cole Kmet now.
Gonna agree. I mean, you're just gonna have to look somewhere else. Browns taking on the Colts. Is Deshaun Watson gonna play? We shall see. If Deshaun Watson is back, are you feeling good enough to start him?
I am. It's a Colts. Doesn't scare me. I think if he plays, look, if he plays, he's got to be fully healthy at this point. So if he plays, I think he's a good start, even in a 1 QB league.
I mean, you nailed it because, yeah, like you said already, seemed like he was going to play, should have played. At this point, it seems like, yeah, if they're putting him out there, then not only are they good with him playing, but he's obviously pretty sure he's 100%. I still think he's playable. I don't know if we'll see Watson of old, but he's still good enough. If there's a setback or he's just not ready to go out there, we'll see PJ Walker, led the team to a win, but do you like him in fantasy?
Yeah, not a lot of upside here. Not starting them, even in Superflex.
Well, he's not my least favorite in a Superflex league because could build off of last week, a much easier matchup compared to the 49ers. So in Superflex 2QB, I think he's startable, but that's it. And then David Njoku, either way, where do you rank him?
Yeah, not feeling David Njoku. Just doesn't look like it's going to be his year. I prefer not to start him.
Exactly. I think it's just the offense, the way he's being used, like you said. I can't feel there's not enough upside here, so just going to have to pass. And then we're going to see Minshew Mania this week when they go back to Indy.
If by Minshew Mania you mean multiple turnovers, maybe. If by Minshew Mania you mean a great passing game in my fantasy lineup, no chance.
Yeah, some people are going to look at the stat line and say, oh, look, he threw for so many yards. Well, that's because A, it was garbage time, and B, they were down early because of Gardner Minshew not throwing the ball very well. So not only do I not have any interest in starting him, I'm looking at his early line and underdog, 216 passing yards. I'm going lower because he's going against the statistically best defense against a quarterback so far this year. And you saw what they just did to Brock Purdy. He couldn't even throw for 200 yards. And again, if you have not tried underdog, you see what I'm talking about. You look at the pick'ems, you're going to get a free square, basically. You get the pick'em for Derek Carr just going for 1 yard on Thursday night. And you can combine that with any other pick you like. And that's a good way to automatically triple your money. If you haven't signed up yet, use promo code ENDGAME. You can take advantage of that new customer special pick. And you get a 100% deposit match up to $500 while it lasts. So check it out. Another divisional game here, got Bills at the Patriots. So the tight ends here for Buffalo have been banged up and kind of ineffective. Is this the week Dalton Kincaid does something?
I mean, maybe, but I don't want to find out in my lineup. I'm not ready to start him yet.
Nah, I'm kind of keep waiting for something to happen. I'll keep waiting. Dalton Kincaid, you can't start him. I really don't think you need to roster him just yet. And that leads me to Mac Jones, still the starter for New England, still not doing anything too great. I mean, could you even consider him against Buffalo?
No chance.
And again, this is what I would say, not even in a 2 QB league. Give me PJ Walker instead. And then what about Hunter Henry? Started the season kind of hot, but has disappeared.
Yeah, now against the Bills, can't start Hunter Henry either.
No, definitely cannot. Washington going to travel to New York to take on the Giants. Let's start with Sam Howell. Kind of quietly putting up big fantasy points on occasion. Does this interest you as a streamer this week?
I think it has to. He's mostly been good this year. It's the Giants. The matchup shouldn't scare you. I think Sam Howell is a good streaming option this week.
It would seem so. I mean, he's going to be a guy who's available. You got guys like Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott, CJ Stroud on by. You need a replacement. Howell might be one of your best bets. And at tight end, Logan Thomas. Predictably, at least for you, you called this the letdown game. Didn't do anything against Atlanta. Does he do something against the Giants?
I mean, maybe. It's not a terrible matchup, but Logan Thomas just is what he is. He's a streaming option only.
There you go. This week could be streamed, but just a lot of risk here. And then will we see the return of Daniel Jones? Did miss last week. If he gives it a go, do you give him a go?
No, against this Commanders defense with this offensive line, no chance.
You already know where I'm going here. It's a hard no to Daniel Jones. And what if it's Tyrod Taylor? I mean, look, he didn't throw for touchdowns or put up big numbers, but at least he was efficient. Actually give the Giants a chance to win. Do you think he gets better this week against Washington?
I mean, maybe he gives the Giants a chance to win again, but he's probably not going to give your fantasy team a chance to win, not starting Tyrod Taylor.
Well put. Yeah, not enough upside. Again, it would have to be a desperate play in a super flex league. And then what about Darren Waller?
Continues to disappoint, but I mean, how many tight ends do you really feel better about than Darren Waller? Probably a lot, honestly. But I kind of feel like you still just have to put him in your lineup and take whatever he gives you.
I haven't felt good about Darren Waller at all this whole past calendar year, 2 years, 3 years. I mean, maybe because it's the Commanders and they're giving up a lot of passing yards, but again, only if you really don't have anybody better. Atlanta's going to face Tampa Bay. Let's start with Desmond Ridder, who, it's kind of weird to say this, but the last couple of weeks has been better in fantasy than reality. Can you trust him in Tampa?
I mean, trust is always a strong word with Desmond Ridder, but look, Goff did play well against this team on the road as well. But man, I would have a hard time putting Desmond Ridder in a 1 QB lineup. 2 QB Superflex only.
Look, I did think he was playable last week. Again, I'm not talking about a single QB league. I don't feel it this week. On the road, he's definitely worse. Tampa Bay, a better defense slightly than Washington's. I'm just going to say no to Ridder. I think this is definitely going to be a comeback down-to-earth game. But what about Kyle Pitts? Back-to-back big games for him. Actually scored a touchdown. Is he a guy now you can feel good about?
I think so. I think Kyle Pitts, one of these tight ends now, you got him, you start him, you take whatever you get.
Agree. I mean, this is not the type of matchup that scares me away from Pitts, regardless of what the Falcons as a whole do or what Ridder does. We're seeing Pitts now become a guy that you need to start. And then there's Baker Mayfield, let down last week. Does he bounce back against the Falcons?
I mean, maybe. It's not quite as tough of a defense as the Lions, but we may be seeing the real Baker Mayfield here. 2 QB Superflex only.
Agree. He's still on the radar in that format, but if you're looking for a streamer in a single quarterback league, keep looking. And then there's Cade Otton, still the number 1 tight end there. I like this Falcons defense. Was supposed to be very generous to the tight end, but they weren't last week.
Yeah, there's some tight ends that it doesn't matter the matchup because they need the usage. So maybe, but I think it's going to be a big Godwin game again. I'm not starting Cade Otton.
Nah, I don't think you can. Again, it gives you a touchdown or nothing, and it's most likely nothing. So no to Otton. Steelers at the Rams. Kenny Pickett gets Deontay Johnson back. Had a week to take off and think about things and hopefully game plan better. Does this give you confidence in Kenny Pickett?
No. What is the upside here with Kenny Pickett? Even in 2 QB, I can't do it. Not starting Kenny Pickett.
I am not either. Come on, let's see something drastically different first. No, I'm not starting Pickett. Although Pat Freiermuth is also back, now that he's going to be on the field, is he a tight end option that you could feel decent about?
I think so. I mean, the Rams have not been very good against tight ends. We know Freiermuth will be involved. He'll catch some passes. He could potentially score a touchdown. I think Freiermuth this week is a decent start for a tight end.
Yeah, I think he's hovering right there in the very low end of the tight end 1 range. I don't feel as good about him as I did before the season, but he's still an option. And then what about Matt Stafford? Still putting up big yardage. He's got his guy back. This Pittsburgh defense isn't too scary.
No, the only fear here is kind of like what we saw last week with Arizona, where they just did not have to throw it a lot. But this is a good matchup. Stafford's slinging it. Even in a 1 QB league, I think he's a good start.
Yeah, I don't feel like this will be one of his best weeks, but I'd say he's decent. If you need a streamer, go with him. What about Tyler Higbee, though? Can we even trust him?
No, he has been killed by Cooper Kupp.
Nah, look, even before Cooper Kupp came back, he wasn't putting up numbers like we expected. I think Higbee is a guy we just have to ignore. Cardinals at the Seahawks. Josh Dobbs, still the guy there in Arizona, although he's looked pretty rough the last 2 weeks. What do you think he does this week?
Yeah, on the road against Seattle, crashing back down to earth. Do not want to start Josh Dobbs.
Nah, it's too risky. And even though Seattle may not have an elite defense, it is a tough place to play. I think you're going to have to say no to Dobbs in any format. And then what about Zach Ertz? Seems like he should always be playable, but he kind of took a backseat to Trey McBride last week.
Yeah, a couple of weeks in a row now, he's really kind of declined. It is Seattle, though. It's a great matchup for tight ends, but man, streaming option only.
Agree. That's the thing. If he was the only tight end getting targets, that'd be one thing, but now you got to wonder. So, again, this is a guy only if you're really thin at tight end on waivers. Then Geno Smith, I mean, he got yardage, but he also turned the ball over and just kept getting sacked last week. Is this a get-right game for him?
I mean, maybe. It's certainly a good matchup, but man, he's only thrown more than one touchdown in one game this year. Like, he kind of looks like the Geno Smith I remember from back in the day this year. Obviously, the offensive line not doing him any favors, so even in this good matchup, I can only put him in the 2 QB Superflex rank this week.
Yeah, even if he gets better this week, I don't feel a big game because just might not need to throw the ball that much. Like I said, he's been more just kind of like a safe fallback option. I think that's what he is this week. If you got a guy on bye and you need somebody to get you by, that's Geno. Packers playing the Broncos. Let's start with Jordan Love. Didn't play last week, but when last we saw him, had a rough game. Does he get better?
I mean, he has to be better than that. That's about as bad as you can play. And it is the Broncos. So I'm going to put Jordan Love in the start category, even in 1 QB leagues.
Gonna agree. You got to look at the matchup. I think Love is definitely a streaming option up there with Howell and Carr, probably the best options this week. And what do you make of Luke Musgrave now that they got Christian Watson back? Does that hurt him?
It probably does, but also it's the Broncos, so he could score. I think this week in this matchup, he's a streaming option.
Agree. Not as excited as I was early in the season about him, but you're searching for a tight end. At least he's got some upside. And then there's good old Russ. At home this time, gets the Packers. Is he on the radar?
He's on the radar, but only in 2 QB Superflex. I mean, even then he's kind of risky, but no way I could start him in a 1 QB league.
Yeah, I just don't even want to deal with having Russell Wilson in a lineup. Yeah, sure, in a super flex, why not? And then the Chargers take on the Chiefs this week. Both quarterbacks must start. Travis Kelce, probably a must start still. Gerald Everett, though?
Yeah, not a must start. Not a guy you even need to stream, honestly.
No, I don't think so. Let's just ignore Everett. And then Dolphins taking on the Eagles. Could be a lot of points in this game. Again, both quarterbacks, very good options. Is Dallas Goedert a guy you think could have a big game, though?
I mean, I don't know about a big game. It could be a shootout, but I still think Dallas Goedert is a guy. If you got him, you start him, you take what you get.
Yeah, Dolphins not terrible against tight ends, but you know there's potential here. Not a lot of tight ends you're going to put over him this week, so I think he's still a good option. And then the 49ers taking on the Vikings. Brock Purdy finally came down to earth, finally lost a game. So what does that mean? Bounce back this week, or could he have a rough time without potentially CMC or Debo?
Yeah, I think he'll certainly miss CMC and he might miss Debo, but it's the Vikings. I think Purdy this week has enough upside that even in a 1 QB league, I'd start him.
I'm not going to go that far. I think he can be streamed, but I think of the guys I've mentioned, I'm going to put him below even like a Sam Howell type. I just don't see as much upside. This might just not be a high-scoring game again like we saw with Cleveland. So I'm going to say Purdy only streamable if you need to. And then what about George Kittle? No longer a must-start, but maybe he's the guy who goes off because of those other players being hurt.
I mean, if CMC and Debo are both out, it should help George Kittle, but I don't really know what could help George Kittle at this point. But look, he can always pop off for a huge game, so I think you got to just keep him in your lineup.
Yeah, I think at this point, with what's going on, if you got Kittle, I think you have to start Kittle. Do you have to start Kirk Cousins? I mean, he's at home, but then he's facing the Niners.
Yeah, I think this week for Cousins, even though he is at home, that passing attack did not look the same without Justin Jefferson. I'm going to say 2 QB Superflex only.
Yeah, I mean, look, he didn't put up big numbers last week against the Bears. I really don't want to have to start Kirk Cousins. 2 QB league, yeah, he's still at least got some sort of floor. All right, that's our take on all the quarterbacks and tight ends that you need to know about for Week 7. You want to know about running back and wide receiver too? Well, it's here on this playlist. Everything you need to win for Week 7 in fantasy football.